Without question, this legislation will set into motion a massive undertaking across Illinois. We will fix our broken bridges. We will repave roads, not just to drive on, but roads that will drive economic expansion.
Hi folks, thanks for joining us on this 4th of July edition, and I am Terry Martin with the Illinois Channel.
And I'm Jeff Berkowitz, host and producer of Public Affairs in Chicago.
And Jeff, as everyone knows who has a car, the big news so far this week is on July 1, the gas tax in Illinois went up as part of the new fiscal year in Illinois, and the capital bill that Governor Pritzker just signed into law. So that's what we are having an impact on for so many people who are now seeing the gas prices jump. But it's going to have more of an impact, we're hearing, than just those who are driving around in their automobiles. One of the impacts, according to the Gas Station Owners Association, otherwise known as the Illinois Petroleum Marketers Association, is that for all those gas stations that are located near a border of Illinois, and we have quite a lot of borders where we border neighboring states, they're going to be at a very non-competitive disadvantage. Let's listen to part of an interview I did with Bill Fleischle from that association back in April when a higher gas tax was being talked about, and we'll hear what he thought the impact would be.
You have to remember the tax in Illinois is not only a motor fuel tax, which is a per gallon tax, there's also a state sales tax on it, and there's also most communities have a local motor fuel tax and a local sales tax. So it would increase the tax to go up about 50 cents a gallon, I would guess, somewhere in that vicinity. And I think that would drive commerce, entice people to go over borders to buy their fuel. You'll see a reduction in volume of fuel sold. In the last tax, it was about a 6 or 7% decline, and that's 6 or 7% of the people not coming into our facilities. And if not in our facilities to buy gasoline, they're not in our facilities to buy other ancillary products to sell sales tax. So I think they'll make a mark for money, but you actually lose money in the long run. And we will be the biggest losers. And we will lose customers, and we will lose facilities. Over the last 5 years, we've lost 700 facilities in the state. We employed over 90,000 people 5 years ago. We employ 71,000 people as an industry. So all those things are detrimental to commerce, our side of the business.
So Jeff, Bill Fleischle with the Illinois Petroleum Marketers Association just saying, as we heard, that the gas stations in Illinois are going to be at a real disadvantage.
Well, you know, it's funny because a lot of this, obviously, capital fund is said to be bipartisan, but most of this is really promoted by the Democratic Party. Governor Pritzker, Speaker Madigan, Senate President Cullerton, they're the troika who run Illinois. And you would think they know, they tend to be Democrats, so they tend to talk about stimulus, you know, Keynesian stimulus, and that has a multiplier effect. And they talk about government priming the pump, so government spends money and all of that. So it didn't dawn on any of these folks that when you double the gas tax from 19 cents to 38 cents, and every time somebody gets a fill up, we're talking, you know, $3, depending on how big your tank is, $3 to $4 more paying on gas. Yeah, on gas, and more to the point, if the price is a lot lower, as it is, you know, between say Kentucky and Illinois on these border towns, people are going to take a drive. Competition exists. Wouldn't they know that? Or did they know that and they said, the hell with it, we think it's worth it?
The interesting thing is we should say we're trying to just cover this issue, and the point is, I was going to say, we're not beating up on the governor. In fact, this was a bipartisan bill. We passed the capital bill, $45 billion, that got votes from both sides of the aisle, and we'll hear a little bit more about that. Well, just today, Jeff, I took a look and compared the prices just to see, is this impact having, as Bill Fleischle predicted back in April. Let's take a look for a second here at a price difference. Way down in Illinois, on the Ohio River, is the Illinois town of Metropolis, and right across the river in Kentucky is Paducah, Kentucky. We compared those two prices to see what kind of impact is it having on the border. And as we can see right here, if we look at the Citgo price in Illinois there on the left, that's Illinois. On the right, the Superway, that's $2.37, about 40 cents difference, but when you look at that Metro Speedy in Illinois at 279, you know, there's another 40-cent difference. And then on Casey's at 289 compared to the Marathon alongside it over in Paducah, Kentucky, that's a 50-cent a gallon difference. So there you go, Jeff, 40 to 50%, or 50 cents per gallon, I should say. So, you know, you're looking at $8 to $10 if you load up with 20 gallons. And let me just, let me throw in one more. I took a graphic someone had posted on Facebook today. And as you can see, it says the pilot station in Paducah, Kentucky reporting their business is up 85% from Illinois people coming over to buy their gas in Kentucky. So very much what Bill Fleischle of the Illinois Petroleum Marketers Association was predicting when we spoke to him about this issue back in April.
Well, yeah, if Kentucky didn't happen to raise its gas tax, which as I understand they didn't, about the same time Illinois raised its gas tax 38 cents, you might expect in economics, basic economics, a 40-cent or so spread. And maybe even some of those Kentucky stations might be absorbing a little bit or pushing their prices down a little bit more just to give a little bonus to get those Illinois folks there and to stay there. And then, as you know, these gas stations often sell a variety of food and other things, cigarettes, coffee, sandwiches, and so forth. So people stop there for the gas, they may stop there for the business. Now, as you said, Terry, we're not saying this was bipartisan, and we're not here to be after the governor or Democrats or Republicans, but people might not have completely thought through all of this. I mean, you know, I saw Terry Link just yesterday, and he was talking about how great this capital bill is, and we had to do it. And I said, you know, Senator Link, maybe did you have to do all 45 billion? Because he was being asked about the gas tax, and if you did say 25 billion, and again, bipartisan, Democrats and Republicans did 25 billion, maybe you could have gotten by with a less of an increase in the gas tax and somewhat lower impact. You could do this, but more gradually.
Well, again,
that's
I mean, and this is where we're trying to flesh it out. And Terry Link was at the governor signing the Capitol bill back on Friday. He and others praised the governor for his leadership, the governor's leadership in getting this done, and that the wheels almost came off at the last minute. Terry Link mentioned in his address to the crowd at the bill signing ceremony that at one point late in the session, right at, at the very last, he said, I called up the governor at 10 o'clock at night and said we had a problem. And the governor said, well, I'm in my office, come over. And that was the kind of thing that a number of people said was really the mark of Pritzker's leadership. And again, this is a bipartisan bill, but even good things. And the reason the gas tax has gone up, to remind people, is that's where the money, a big part of the money, not all of it, is coming for the capital.
Well, just
that $45 billion.
let me add the punch. Terry, excuse me, let me add the punchline. I'm not sure, I may have forgotten to say it. So, I said to Senator Link, who I've known and you've known for a long time, he's a friendly guy. And I said, do you think maybe you needed the capital fund? Maybe you did it too much. And he said, oh, no, not enough. And so if you did more of a capital bill, you'd have more of a gas price spread, more of these problems. You just have to, politicians have to be a little bit sharp on economics. They have to realize there's competition. They have to realize there's an impact to what they do and judge these things. Now, maybe if they did all of that and they still came away and said, Jeff, this was worth it. We had to do these things. We needed it now. We went 10 years without a capital bill. The governor defended this tax price increase when he was here in Chicago. He said, we haven't raised the gas tax since 1990. So think of all of that time, gas prices and gas taxes in a sense should have been going up, should have been generating funds to do capital projects gradually. He didn't lay all of that out, but I think that was his thinking. So I don't expect he's gonna see this and say, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought of that. And we hope the governor comes on sometime so we can have him live giving his arguments.
I wouldn't say that they don't. I wouldn't want to say that they don't know economics or don't know the implications. I'm sure they looked at a variety of things. If it were me and I was editorializing here, I would say, maybe there's other ways to do it. The problem that you often have with something like the gas tax is, first of all, it's very regressive, and the governor's made the case against regressive taxes when he talks in favor of his so-called fair tax, because he says, the flat tax, income tax is regressive. But, the raising gas prices on middle-class families or lower middle-class families where everyone has to drive to their job, that's very regressive. So that's the downside. And as we just saw in our example with people driving across the state line, a number of people, when they're near the border, can avoid that tax. They go over to Indiana, they go over to Kentucky, they go over to Missouri, and they're buying their gasoline there, and then they buy other things. And if they're smoking, they're buying their cigarettes there. And so Illinois and those Illinois businesses are losing out on that business.
Well, okay, and you said maybe, I'm sure the governor knows some economics. I know he has a law degree.
Well, I don't
maybe
think that he's totally
so,
clueless. I don't want to make it sound like they haven't.
No.
Plus, there was a whole lot of people involved in this and these discussions,
Okay.
so it's not like they were throwing darts. One thing I would have suggested, maybe if I were in the discussions, is, maybe to apply something like the electric bill, apply to that where everyone pays an electric bill, and you can't run across the state line to avoid that, where it's not going to be riding so heavy on one industry as what we are currently doing to those gas
Well,
station owners.
I don't know. It's a pretty regressive tax too,
Well, not
and
as
people
much,
have
because
to some
everyone
extent
has it.
less
It's just-
choice about
it wouldn't
that.
be as, it would be spread out over a broader base.
Well, you'd want to look at that quantitatively. I wouldn't be so sure, number one. And the point I'd make about this, yeah, they all know, Democrats and Republicans, politicians, not all know economics, but people tend to forget two basic things in economics. One is, what economics teaches us is life is a series of tough choices and trade-offs. So whenever you see some gains, you better look at the costs. Maybe they looked at those completely. Okay. And the other thing is, folks, there are always substitutes. So when you raise the price in one area, people are going to be looking around for substitutes to go to another or another kind. Basic economics. I'm not saying they didn't think those through, but they may not have, not as completely as they should have. But we'll find out. It's early. This is only a day after the gas tax. We should come back and visit this in August and September and see if these adjustments are continuing or are they mitigated.
Yeah, and
Time
let
will
me
tell.
add this too. Illinois is already, there might be a settling down period, perhaps, hopefully,
Right.
where people were shocked at the immediate jump. As you say, when you get to August and all, you're certainly going to have a lot of people in the state who are not going to be driving across the border. But when you have those people in areas like a Quincy or in the Metro East, then, for a 15-minute drive or 10-minute drive, you're going to have that. And,
one thing-
let me say, we're talking about the
Go ahead.
gas tax, but it's everything in today's show, by the way, we're talking about, as you see over our heads, the gas taxes, the capital bill, and gaming. These are all interwoven, and it kind of goes to the complexity of what the lawmakers and the governor were working with. They wanted that $45 billion capital bill. How was it going to be funded? Well, the gas taxes, but also some of gaming. And we've talked about this in the past, but not recently. On that capital bill, we got the horizontal, they call it, money, and that's the gas tax is going to build bridges and roads. But on those construction of new buildings, on the repairs of existing buildings, that's what they called the vertical capital, and that's coming from gaming. And so the governor and the lawmakers, they passed and signed into law just last Friday the gaming bill, so that those are now both law, and that's good. The money from that is going to be going in part to fund those repairs on buildings and all that so many of the universities have been struggling with, as well as some others.
Well, Terry, timing is everything in politics, they say. And so we're taping this on July 2nd. In a few days, we're to July 4th. I've seen estimates that there'll be a few million people on the road on the July 4th weekend here in Illinois. So they'll be noticing the impact, particularly in a day or two, of that gas tax increases they take to the roads. And as people take to their 2-week vacations, often in the month of August, and a lot of those vacations are on the road. And they're in their car. So we'll see how this stuff, plays out. But look, the governor is going around, as you know, and you mentioned, and we've seen, town to town, talking about the benefits of the capital fund, okay? And he's doing that in Chicago and Rockford and Walker's Bluff and all around the state, okay? This is the dark side. We're focusing on there's plenty of pluses. We're giving him, if he wants to be fair, these are some of the minuses. When you have a $45 billion program, and remember, which we talked about this earlier in the last few months, that's financed by $21 billion in bonds, which nobody's been talking about yet. Those bonds are going to be issued over 6 years, and there's going to be a payback of that principal and interest. The taxes we're talking about are some of the $14 billion in pay-as-you-go taxes, that I guess go for 6 or 7 years. So look, with every benefit, there's a cost. We're talking about some of the costs. The governor's been talking about some of the benefits.
That's right. I mean,
maybe one outweighs the other.
People complain about the potholes. You got to have some money to fix it. And so if we want the bridges fixed, we all know we can all look around. And, I would say we have a generational responsibility. A lot of times we're driving on bridges that were paid for by the people back in the 1960s and 1950s or the 1940s. Every generation has to reinvest in the American infrastructure. So, no one maybe likes to pay these taxes, but we also want to have safe bridges and better roads and better transportation. The other thing that is happening, as we said, the gaming. So we're getting 6 new casinos, and one of those is gone down to Walker's Bluff, which is a winery in Carpentersville. That's just outside of Carbondale, Illinois. As we speak here today, we're taping this on July the 2nd, the governor and others were down at the Walker's Bluff winery today and making their comments about the impact that both the Capitol bill and the gaming will have. Let's listen first to some of the comments the governor made earlier today.
Overall, we're investing $45 billion over 6 years to repair what's broken and build what's needed, all while supporting hundreds of thousands of jobs throughout our state. We're all well aware of the fiscal challenges Illinois has faced, but after decades of disinvestment and passing the buck, this year Democrats and Republicans came together to say enough is enough. Together, we passed the largest, most robust capital plan in our state's history, and we did it in the very best traditions of democracy, a bipartisan commitment to better the lives of all of our people. And you should all be very proud of that. People walking across the aisle to talk to one another, to get real things done for people living right here. We're reshaping the future of our state, and we're making investments in every region, especially here in Southern Illinois. Later today in Marion, I'll be outlining many of the roads that we'll be fixing across Southern Illinois as we take the obstacles of our infrastructure and turn them into opportunity.
And so there you have the taking obstacles and turning them into opportunities, hopefully so.
Yeah, and to be fair to the governor, he'd go on there and he's at other places. He talks about, the cost to people having roads that are in repair or need repair. And so there's a maintenance aspect on your car if you're going over potholes and other more severe detriments to the road. And you could be talking, I think they put out estimates that bad roads can on average cost car owners $500 or $600 a year. Are those reasonable estimates? Will they be well appreciated by the citizens? We'll find out. And one thing he said there, it's bipartisan, this capital funding bill. In a sense, what he did, maybe it's good, maybe that's how government should work, but also politically, you get 20 Republicans in the State House caucus to climb on the capital fund bill, they're co-opted. The Republican Party cannot run against this, or it's harder for them to run against the high gas tax when they're running for House seats or Senate seats in 2020, because half their caucus was supporting this. Just like they can't complain that much about the budget bill when 10 Republicans supported the $40.6 billion budget bill. So all I'm saying, Terry, is nobody's playing politics. Life in the political arena is both public policy and politics. And you got to be conscious if you're going to play that game well of both, right?
Yes, and you know, something that I'm going to be watching, as you just mentioned, and the governor mentioned, it's bipartisan bills. So, as you just said, the Republicans, it's going to be hard for them to be running against some of these bills that they voted for. So, we had such a contentious atmosphere in Illinois politics during the Rauner years. I think one of the thing that everyone in the State House is trying to do is say, look, let's get some things done. Maybe we can return to fighting each other politically in 2020. But I think they were focusing really on trying to get something done, which is why people on both sides of the aisle have said this was such an historic session of the legislature where such big things were getting passed. What we'll have to see is how long will this era of good tidings last.
Well, yeah, and so going over to gaming, which we're covering, we sort of slide from capital fund into gaming. The two are somewhat related. One may be paying for the other to some extent, small extent. But, you know, the 6 new casinos that are part of the gaming, Chicago, Rockford, Waukegan, Danville, Walker's Bluff you just mentioned, and Chicago Metro South Suburban. I mean, those things are put out there geographically because somewhat similar to Secretary of State offices. You know, when you were Secretary of State in the olden days, and maybe still, it's a pretty important position because you can campaign in a sense from offices across the state. And as the governor goes around talking at each of these casinos in each of these major geographic areas or cities, it's a part of his campaign. And
so for political
and also,
you're saying, which might be true to some extent, and certainly I can tell you the people in Southern Illinois are thrilled to be getting one of the casinos down there at Walker's Bluff, just about 10, 15 minutes outside of Carbondale. Before we get too late in the show here, I want to play the comments of the Lieutenant Governor, who also spoke today at the Walker's Bluff Winery. That now, Jeff, by the way, I should say, the owner, Cindy Bunch, said that if we get this license, she is going to build a 300-room hotel. She's going to build a new water park there on this like 130-something acres. She's already put tens of millions of dollars in this investment. And to remind people, Southern Illinois has often been a place where they have had some of the highest unemployment. So this is going to create some real jobs for them to be getting this casino. But let's listen to what the Lieutenant Governor said earlier today.
Gaming expansion and the legalization of sports betting have been years in the making, and Illinois will now get to work on creating thousands of jobs and rebuilding communities. And the jobs created will be good jobs that will lift up families across our state. And I'm so proud that the revenue generated will deliver results by investing in transportation, state facilities, education, and our environment. This is how you connect communities and create opportunities for the next generation. As Walker's Bluff begins to build a casino, people from across this region will be able to participate and have access to opportunities that are created. Rebuild Illinois is an investment in Illinois and its people. And I'm so proud that we are investing in you and communities across our state.
well, it's a major impact, as you were saying, in gaming. And we had about, I think, 10,000 gaming stations in the state before. Now with Chicago getting 4,000 stations, and then 2,000 each in the other 5,000 casinos, and putting slots over in the airports at O'Hare and at Midway Airport, and racinos, more than slots, gambling tables in the racetracks. We may be going to 30,000 or 40,000. We got 7,000 stations, video poker across the state. I said once, and you disputed it, I said, Illinois may be becoming the gaming capital of the world, but a lot of people are talking about Illinois trying to be the gaming capital of the Midwest. And the bet may work. It may be jobs, but there are naysayers. There are critics who say, when you create jobs, they come more and better from the private sector if you keep taxes low. Okay. If you keep taxes low, you can promote more growth from the private sector. Because when you see these casinos crop up in their jobs, what you're not seeing for some of these items, some of the government projects, maybe not the casinos, there's an expenditure that creates jobs for construction, but you don't see the offsetting negative impact of issuing bonds or taxes. And all I'm saying is, again, you got to study this. The bet has been made.
Here's the other
This will
side.
create
Here's
jobs.
the other side. They're creating jobs, and I would say this. First of all, the people who are getting these licenses are going to have to pay a substantial fee for these licenses. And so that's, in the millions of dollars. This is not chump change. Then they're going to have to build, in the case of Walker's Bluff, they're going to have to build a casino. So the state of Illinois is going to get a lot more infrastructure that's going to be paid for. In the case of Walker's Bluff, and they're building that hotel and their water park and the convention center on this property, that's all private money going in. But I know from having done a story down there before, they said that they had lost over $2 million worth of convention business because they were told, unless you got something for our people to do at night, we're looking for places we can go and have our convention. People want to go out and be able to do a little gambling at night. So they had to turn down $2 million. So it's not just looking at the dollars being spent. We're talking about economic development. It's also about what money can be brought into this state with these changes, with the better roads. That might bring in more businesses. With the gambling, that might bring in more tourism. We will have to see. Now, that said, I would also say I talked to someone recently, and he said he was down in Tennessee and Memphis, where they've been some gaming expansion a couple of years ago, and apparently, they were closing down some of these gambling operations that had opened up because there just wasn't enough gambling business to go around. And that's been one of the arguments that has been made, that as we expand gaming, we might just be cannibalizing the gaming business, because that argument is there's only so many gamblers out there to take their money from.
Right, yeah, you can have stations, but unless you have gamblers at the stations, you don't get the business. So as you open up places, you may be taking business away from other places in Illinois. And your competitors and your rivals, you have to understand, have brains, and they have the ability to react. And we understand that some of the casinos are expanding in Wisconsin and in the surrounding areas. So all I'm saying, I'm not saying it's the wrong thing. You got to weigh benefits and costs. You got to make projections. Sometimes people in government, they underestimate the incentives they create. Some of them are perverse, and maybe they get them. That's why we're here, to sort of second guess and provide both viewpoints of all of these things. And so it's not second guess to be nattering. It's just maybe people have only heard one side, maybe only the negative. They should hear the positive.
Let me throw we can all remember.
Maybe the reverse.
Look, of course people grumble. Now, I can also remember, all of us can also remember that back when President Obama was in office, we had gas prices go up at one point to like $3.79 here in the Springfield area. Now they're at about $1 less, somewhere around $2.70 or so. So if you're going to do this capital bill, and you're going to be doing it through the gas tax, others would argue now's the time. The American economy is now free of having to import oil. We still do that, but we
Terry, the most important thing is to wish everybody a happy 4th. Remind them, if they like this show, to share it with their friends and family, because we're out of time, aren't we, Terry? I mean, we're almost there. So remember, have a happy July 4th, right?
Maybe for once we can get out on time and not have to jam it. So folks, we always appreciate you watching us, and we would say thank you. Have a great 4th of July weekend with your families. And Jeff, we'll see you next week.
Yeah, let's hit that winery, okay?